Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece chapter 961 is out, so if you haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. So I'm not usually one to bring up or complain about One Piece breaks. It's something that Oda deems necessary, and because Oda thinks that, I think that. If anyone deserves a break on this planet, it's Eiichiro Oda, who's slaved for us for over 20 years. But I gotta admit, this week when I got to the end of the chapter, and I saw break next week, that one hit me hard. Right now, I am loving Oden's flashback. You know, maybe I'm alone in feeling this, maybe not, but I think that there's something kind of satisfying in being momentarily transported away from the current events in Wano, which I am enjoying, and I definitely want to see where it goes, but at times it can be a little bit complicated, and there's a lot going on, and with this flashback, you kind of throw that all away, right? We start at square one, and it's back to that old-fashioned, original One Piece chapters that I grew to love, of just, characters that are interesting, doing awesome things, in a chapter-by-chapter way. And at the same time, we're slowly fitting in additional pieces to help us understand the Wano arc and the characters in it, and maybe even potentially more than that. I think I saw on Twitter a question, and this is a legitimate one: how far does this Oden flashback really go? I mean, I doubt it goes... if we're telling all of Oden's story, right, then that would be 100 chapters probably by itself, because the man has lived a full life. But still, there's a lot of stories that you can tell, and it's curious to me which ones we'll get, because, I mean, this is a person that aside from all of his exploits in Wano itself, conquering Curry, meeting and subjugating the 9 Red Scabbards in whatever way, also joined it with the Whitebeard Pirates and became the 2nd Division commander, and later joined with the Roger Pirates. I mean, a little part of me kind of hopes that we might get a little bit of that, and that only hypes me further. But even if we don't, what we are getting, I think, is just really entertaining, because Oden as a character is fascinating. I mean, we speculated this after the last chapter, and this seems basically confirmed, in my opinion, in this chapter. What we saw of Oden, the stories that they tell of him, are not necessarily the truth. We see in this chapter that Oden essentially assumed responsibility for what other people did. Kinemon and those other Yakuza stole this pig and brought this destruction onto the capital, and it seems like Oden embraced accepting that so that no others would fall to any harm. In fact, perhaps this was part of his master plan of being kicked out of the capital, because that seems like something that he wanted to do. But I think either way you look at it, it's great. You either have a unique person, somebody who does things their way, or you have a hero, or a little bit of a combination of both. I think right now you should be doubting most of what we learned in the last chapter about Oden, or at least, these things happen, but the way that they are explained to us is likely going to be very misleading. Like, he hurt his nurse when he was 2 years old, and he gambled and had prostitutes when he was 6 years old, and fought the Yakuza and created his own harem. All of this stuff is probably true, but not in the way that it was told to us. I think right now Oden is being explained as a character who sort of takes responsibility for things and doesn't really explain why, but always has good intentions. But I mean, this is really what we should have been thinking all along, right? Because this isn't the first time that we've heard of Oden. We've heard what he did in previous chapters, and by the age of 20, after he was disowned by his father, kicked out of the capital, and forced to go to Curry, what did he do? But he cleaned the place up. He turned it into a paradise. There used to be brigands and all sorts of nastiness happening there, and it became a place, probably the best place to live in all of Wano. Oden obviously cares about the layman. And at the same time, I think that Oda is doing a great job telling the story and explaining to us how a person could have started their life off as we are led to believe, and end up becoming one of the most powerful people in Wano, not just in terms of how strong they are, but their popularity, and how much the people love them, and how loyal their subordinates are to them. Their influence. Oden, frankly, is just really, really cool. And I can totally buy all of these scabbards laying down their lives and really changing themselves for him. And in retrospect, thinking about all the times that we heard that Oden died, and the reaction from the people that actually knew him, Momonosuke, the samurai, the minks, they were always shown crying, and I think I finally get it. I understand. When Oden died, the world lost a great man. And along the same train of thought, this chapter, made me reevaluate some other things that I'd seen and make me like those moments even more. At the end of this chapter, it was revealed that Orochi was a nobody who was hired on by Yasu to be a kind of servant boy. And then later on, we see Orochi, this person that brought him up in the world and gave him some measure of notoriety, turned on him and he killed him. With absolutely no signs of respecting the man or having any feeling whatsoever for the relationship that at some point in the past they had. And we're not done there. It's like this flashback really unlocks the true potential of many of the scenes that we've already gotten. We know that there was a relationship between Tsuru and Kinemon, that they were husband and wife, but it wasn't really delved into until now. But from this flashback, you really come to understand how much Kinemon does not value himself. He believed himself to be worthless. And so then going back to earlier in this arc where Kinemon chose not to approach Tsuru, and I was in fact surprised that Tsuru didn't take on another husband, that moment just becomes a little bit heartbreaking to me, because Kinemon, after being transported to the future, his first assumption was, oh well, Tsuru didn't need me. She'll find somebody else. I wasn't of any great value to her. And that's just sad, man. A little part of me now is rooting for Kinemon a little bit more than I was before, because I don't want to see him fail. And I don't want to see him come, to this moment of self-hate. I've always been useless and incompetent, because a part of me thinks that might be where the story is going with all the failure that is happening, with the planning the alliance. And at the same time, I think that this reinforces what a loss Odin was for Kinemon, just to have that person there, somebody to look up to, that older brother figure to sort of validate you and support you. But yeah, the moment from this chapter that really captured me, I think captured most people, was when Odin slayed the boar. Previously, we saw Kinemon fight it, and he put up a good fight, but he was just no match. And then Odin went up in there and literally sliced into. I don't think I'm alone in getting huge Noland and Kalgra flashback vibes from this entire chapter, but that moment in particular. If you guys remember from the Noland flashback, they were also talking about gods, what it means to be a god, and the god in particular in the Sky Islands was the giant snake. There's obviously several differences between the two flashbacks, but one similarity is how both Kalgra and Nolan, and in this case Odin, turned against these gods. If you in any way harm the people that I love, I don't care if you are a god or not, I will slay you. And in both flashbacks, these giant creatures called gods to their respective cultures had children. In Noland and Kalgra's flashback, there was a little tiny snake, which grew up to become very, very big and relevant to the Skypiea arc. I personally think that we should think the same of this little piglet. I think 20 years has passed, it's a lot bigger now, and it's going to become relevant to the Wano arc, and likely, as was the case in Skypiea, a friend, an ally of the Strats, especially with Tama's ability. But there's more about this that I want to discuss. We talked about this at the end of the last chapter reaction, but some of the wordage here makes me want to speculate this even more. In this chapter, we see this priest-like character, I don't know his name, who tells us that the white boars are the heralds of the gods, and then that is ancient knowledge. And you guys already know that when somebody brings up ancient knowledge, my first thought is this related to the Void Century? Is this pig in some way a remnant of maybe the lost history and the battles that took place therein? As you guys will already know, I am fascinated by Momonosuke's ability to control Zunisha. As this was described to us in Zou, this is not an ability that is unique to Momonosuke, at least not historically. Somebody else had the very same ability that Momonosuke has today, no matter how rare that ability is. Because somebody first told Zunisha to walk the world forever, an order that Zunisha could not break. In order to break this, it didn't require just anybody telling it to defend itself. It required a very specific person, Momonosuke only. Luffy and Roger and Odin, they could hear Zunisha talk, but they couldn't communicate back to it, and they couldn't change its orders. Only Momonosuke. In simple terms, I think that this makes Momonosuke like the true king of Zunisha. But if you apply this same sort of status, in the same way that Poseidon is the true king of the Sea Kings, to other animals, Momonosuke is not only the king of Zunisha, but the king of all animals that would be similar to it. You gotta wonder if, maybe Momonosuke would have power over, in the same way as Zunisha, something like this god, this white bull, to be able to command it, to be able to control it. Frankly speaking, I think that Momonosuke inherited this unique ability from his ancestors in much the same way that Shirahoshi inherited the title, the powers of Poseidon, from her ancestor during the Void Century. One of my old theories and speculations about Poseidon was that, you have to ask the question of, why are the Sea Kings doing what they are doing today, given that we know that they are a lot more intelligent than we gave them credit for at the very beginning of the series. Is there any purpose to congregating in the calm belts? Is there any purpose for specifically defending particular islands? We see like the Lord of the Coast, and there seems to be various Sea Kings associated with specific islands. Is this something that just randomly happened, or is this a long-standing order, in much the same way that Zunisha had an order to walk the world forever that it could not break, and the Sea Kings have been waiting for the day in which the Noah needs to be transported to the surface? Did Poseidon leave the Sea Kings with an order to defend particular islands from trespassers? Is this potentially a way that Poseidon believed that she could protect these islands even after she had died? And did she order many of the Sea Kings to the calm belt as sort of a divide between the North, East, South, and West Blue and the Grand Line, because it was important to separate the two seas and prevent anyone from easily crossing over? In a way, you could say that I'm arguing that Poseidon isolated these places in order to protect them, in kind of a similar way as we learned for some reason in the past, the island of Wano was decided that the borders needed to be closed. But at some point, the borders would need to be opened again. And so at some point, the Sea Kings, being the intelligent creatures that they are, would need to allow people to travel between the blues when the time is right. But anyway, the point of me bringing this up is because it has me thinking about Momonosuke's power and the speculated ability to be able to control the, quote, land kings. Creatures like Zunisha, creatures like this boar, creatures potentially like the snake that we could see on Jaya, later sent up to the Sky Islands. Is this, a way of potentially trying to protect these islands, Wano and Jaya, potentially others as well, after this person who previously had Momonosuke's ability died? And when looking at the boar in particular, I think that the way that it behaves is really interesting. It's, for the most part, really benevolent. And it doesn't make its presence known. It doesn't terrorize people normally. The only time it does so is if its cub, its piglet, is taken. And so this could be really important to the boar, because the boar is probably not going to live forever, and it needs the next generation to continue whatever task, maybe, that it was set by the previous holder of Momonosuke's ability, some sort of order of defend Wano when it needs defending. But I don't want to get too carried away here. Keep in mind that this is all speculation. These are really interesting thoughts to me and where my mind goes from what we were given about the boar in this chapter. The line specifically about this boar being the herald of the gods is just one of those things that sparks intrigue naturally. But yeah, other than this, I don't really think that there's a whole lot that we have to really speculate. I think that a lot of people are going to want me to talk about Orochi, and it definitely is interesting how Orochi, started off where we see him in this chapter and ended up being the Shogun. I presume that he was a sycophant, that he was a suck-up, that he somehow, some way rode coattails all the way to the top. Maybe he got a little taste of power and decided that he liked it and was willing to take it from others. Maybe he's always had that sort of inclination, and what we see here is a facade. This is Orochi being fake, believing himself to be greater than these other people, but not being in a position in which he can openly express that, because he's a nobody. And I always want to speculate this. Oda always finds a way to in some way justify a villain, give them a reasoning behind their villainy. The truth is that bad guys in real life do not believe themselves to be the bad guy. There's always two sides to a story. There's always a pathway that leads somebody to commit crimes. And so I'm personally interested to see if Oda might do that with Orochi. Perhaps Orochi believes from the bottom of his heart that the borders of Wano shouldn't be open, that doing so would be a detriment to everybody, could potentially destroy the entire country, and that's why he felt as though, Odin needed to die, and anybody who supported him would also need to have died. And whatever cost it took to protect this idea was worth it. But yeah, more than anything, outside of any particular speculation, this chapter leaves me with the feeling that I despise the Shogun Orochi, and I want him to burn. Seeing that face, so innocent and pure, I'll do anything for you, it just irritates the crap out of me. But yeah, guys, that is pretty much all I have to say about this one. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys think. Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Like the video if you like the video, dislike the video if you dislike the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.